good design can be a science, but our next guest is someone that has made it into an art. Welcome, interior designer and stager Kaidan Erwin. Welcome.
Good to see you, David.
You too.
Thank you.
Now, how did a little boy from Oklahoma via New York make his way to this studio today?
Well, as you know, I started in design when I was in New York. I moved to New York when I was 19 out of Oklahoma. I almost immediately went to work. I had very good luck working for very good firms most of my career. Then I moved here in 1989 and worked for antique dealers, and then worked for arguably the biggest design firm here in town, Tucker and Marks, for 13 years. And then about 5 years ago, a good friend of mine who's a real estate agent had a really tough client who was not being very easy about getting a property on the market. And we were having dinner one night and he said, I need your help. This guy is driving me crazy. I need to get this property on the market. Would you talk to him? I don't understand why he doesn't like any of the stagers in town. At the time I was still with Tucker and Marks. I said, sure, I'll be glad to. Knew exactly what the guy wanted. We pulled from like 3 different houses, staged the house. It sold in a week. And my friend, the agent, said to me, you know, you ought to consider doing this for a business.
Right.
You know, you're perfect for this.
So before that, you had been doing interior design on your own.
Yes.
You weren't staging apartments.
Not at all, no.
Do you see that, and you think other designers see that as kind of a, oh, it's just, I don't do that?
Oh, I did too. When I first, I mean, whenever you
so
think
when
of
you
home
said you
stagers,
can make a career out of this, yeah.
Absolutely. Whenever you think of home stagers, there's a kind of a grimace. It's like the ugly stepsister that no one wants to talk about, mostly because it's oftentimes populated with people who really don't have that much of a design background and are more design, for lack of a better word, wannabes. And so the homes tend to look a little pedestrian.
Right.
But I feel like that's changing. There's some very good people in the market these days as stagers, and homes are starting to look much better, as if they were designed by a designer.
Right. Did San Francisco invent this whole concept of home staging?
You would think it did. I don't really know. I know it's been going on here for something like 25 years.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I heard the phrase. I knew exactly what they meant because of my theater background, but I went, what a concept. I'm going to make the house look better to sell it.
Yes.
Is it a competitive market?
Extremely. There's probably 5 really top home stagers here in San Francisco, and then there's
Yourself
dozens.
included.
That's arguable, but it could be.
Yeah.
And then there's dozens of people that are sort of in tiers below that. So there's stagers for every possible budget, every possible market.
Right. Now, do you find that you have come to have a new respect for staging? Obviously, since you do it. I mean, you still have your own design work.
I do.
And color consulting and that sort of thing, but you have gotten a reputation, I know from speaking to realtors, of being a top stager.
Well, thank you. You know, I've learned a lot. In fact, I almost wish I had started staging or even going out on my own maybe 15 years ago. Mostly because my entire design career, which has been almost 30 years now, I've worked for other people, and usually big firms that had a very particular reputation, a very particular look. And so my job was to sort of channel their look with the greatest taste for that client. As weird as this sounds, I never really got to know what my own personal taste was. All this time.
Until when?
Until now. Until the last 5 years, where I had to rely on my eye, because I have to choose furniture, I warehouse the furniture, I buy it, I keep it, I reconfigure it with every new home. And I have discovered what my taste is over the last 5 years. And it's been a revelation, because now it's no longer the sort of the puzzle or the problem that needs to be fixed of me trying to interpret a design firm's look as well as working with a client. It's actually much more of an artistic endeavor that's coming from my intuition.
Do people, when they're having a house staged to sell, or I guess sometimes there are houses or condos that get staged for rental as well, do the owners ever feel like, gosh, was my place ugly? They totally changed it.
Yes, a lot. That happens more often than not, actually. I've had one client literally almost back out of selling their house because they didn't know that their current house could look that good. And they thought, why am I leaving this house? If I can make it look this good, why am I going somewhere else? More often than not, what's happened is those people have then hired me to work on their new homes.
Right, right.
So yeah, that happens frankly, more often than not. I had one guy just recently, 2 gay men, older gay men, great property over in Noe Valley. When it was done, he said 2 things. He walked in and he said, "Oh my God, who are the fabulous people who live in this house?" And then he said, "I thought we were doing pretty well. I feel like now our house looked like early hoarder in comparison." So yeah, that happens a lot.
So do you design your own house?
I do, and again, that's just a recent occurrence.
Uh-huh.
People have said it's like being the cobbler's
His children
exactly.
go
It's like,
shoeless.
I never really did much work on my own home, but now that I've really discovered what makes me happy, it's been much easier to now bring that to my own home.
Yeah.
But it's still difficult.
Well, yeah, because then if you have people over, they must think, well, it better be perfect.
Well, that, and because I'm exposed to so much, it feels like the world is my oyster. How do you make a choice?
Right.
Because so much intrigues me,
Right.
and a lot of it doesn't.
Right.
So I've had to literally wait. It makes my partner crazy. I've literally had to wait for each piece to literally jump out and say, "This is it,"
Right.
which can be a long, drawn-out process. It doesn't happen overnight like staging does.
Yeah. Now, and we've known each other for a long time. There's no reason to pretend we haven't.
Yeah.
And I've known your design work, but I've also heard you speak about something recently that has fascinated me. Speaking about the concept of sexual yoga.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, first of all, it's probably best to clarify what a yogi is. When most people, when they think of a yoga, they think of positions, postures in a yoga class. When I talk about yoga, a yoga is actually a physical embodiment of love. It's a physical practice, it's an energetic practice, and it's a practice of love. So whenever you talk about yoga, that's what you're talking about. So a sexual yoga is the practice of learning what the connection is between your sexuality and your spirituality, learning what your heart is best at bringing to relationship, learning what you are literally born to be without all of the patterns that we take on from childhood to either get love or to protect ourselves, to learn how to come out from underneath those things. And then when you discover what you are, be able to offer that more fully to an intimate partner.
And is this something that you teach or you share your knowledge with other people?
Both. I do teach it. I first learned it. I've learned it over the last 12 years. There's a brilliant teacher, a man named David Data, who I'm sure a lot of people know about. Though he's not so well known in the gay community because probably about 90% of the people who come to his classes are straight men and women. But what he's teaching is not strictly for straight men and women. It's for everybody.
Right.
And so I first learned it from him. I've been his assistant, one of his assistants for about 12 years, and then I also teach myself once a month here in San Francisco.
Right. You know, when we met, I know you were a student of another spiritual teacher here in San Francisco, and that was one of the things that was eye-opening to me, a little boy from Richmond, Virginia, that, wow, you can meet someone who's a designer and also is a disciple in an ashram, and no one in San Francisco thinks that's weird.
Right.
Do you ever get amazed sometime about just how many hats, I shouldn't say how many hats, but how San Francisco embraces all of our, all our identities?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, your name wasn't originally Kaidan.
No, it was not.
And tell the story about that, if you would.
Well, like whenever you go into any sort of monastic life, which is what it was, as we know, oftentimes those people or that organization will give you a new name so that you have a new association for your new life. We carry a lot of associations with our name, and a lot of those associations may not necessarily be what you want to bring to this new, more contemplative life. So they will give you a name that's literally an energized name that's more fitting with who you are aspiring to be or are moving toward being. The teacher I was with, and that she was a spiritual teacher. David is not a spiritual teacher, he's a yogic teacher. My spiritual teacher, she chose the name for me. And I remember there were a number of people in this ashram, and some people got gloriously beautiful names and other people did not get such beautiful names. Not that they were bad names, they were just difficult, like, you know, Sarah Kavi as a woman's name or something like that. They're difficult. So when she said my name originally, and it was Kaidan. Kaidan. It's a Chinese word. It's actually a room within a Buddhist monastery where initiates are brought into the Buddhist precepts. It's actually a Buddhist nun who just said, oh, just tell people you're a place of holy initiation. So just keep it simple.
Right, right.
So when I was given the name, I was living with two guys in the ashram who were Cuban. And when they heard the name, they said, oh, Kaidan, a very nice name, Kaidan. And I liked the way that sounded. So I went to my teacher and I said, do you mind, would it be all right if we pronounce it that way? And she said, absolutely. So that's how it happened.
Yeah, so the name is Kaidan, but it's pronounced Kaidan.
Kaidan.
So does anyone still call you David anymore?
Only my brother and sister.
Right.
That's it. And some of my siblings back, some of my cousins back in Oklahoma.
Right.
No one else.
And do you find the balance now between the yoga work and the design work, it works well?
Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. It's all useful and all
part of the
serves
piece.
me.
We've been speaking with Kaidan Erwin, learning about design and the loving form of yoga. I'm David Perry, and I thank you for loving and watching 10%. We'll see you next week.